Hello again. I was supposed to do this on Monday, but I'm late. So here I am, midweek through, we're having this conversation. So I did say that I would come on midweek, more on Instagram than here, but anyway, here I am. Because we've had this, there seems to be this topic about reflection going on this week, conversations. And if you follow me on Instagram also, you'll have seen how that conversation has developed, not just with me, but with Trevor, with Lydia on the Art of Inquiry. So we've all been talking about reflection lately. So I wanted to share some strategies. Hi, Gazi. I wanted to share some strategies with you that I have used over the years, and it was it's very much it's been a process. Let me tell you. For those of you that don't know who I am, my name is Susan Powers. I'm the voice behind the blog pypteachingtools.com, where I'm always sharing loudly and proudly about inquiry-based teaching, student-led inquiry-based teaching. So I started with the PYP in 2005. And at that time, when we did, hi Maria, well, that time when we did reflection, it was at the end of the unit. That was all we did. We just reflected at the end of the unit. And it was the same old standard questions that came up over and over and over again. And it just wasn't authentic. The kids just regurgitated the same answers that they felt that you wanted to hear. And it certainly wasn't meaningful. It didn't give much information for me as a teacher or for the children as the learner as to how they could progress, what steps they could take next. So I just thought, this is ridiculous. we have to figure something out. So the first thing I did was I started to make it more of an ongoing process. Okay, this was before the enhancements. I mean, long before the enhancements. And reflection was still a key concept. So the first thing I did, and I'll switch my camera around so that you can see it. Okay, so this was the first step. Very basic, focusing on the theme, focusing on the central idea. But the point is that this chart was constantly up throughout the 6 weeks that we did our inquiry. And so the children would then add their mini reflections, if you like, to this chart. And I did point out as we progressed through this whole process that we were focusing on the concepts, the central idea, lines of inquiry, etc., the content, the things that we were knowledgeable about, and then the skills, which at the time were the transdisciplinary skills, now the ATL skills, and also the learner profile. Okay, so this would end up being full by the end of our 6 weeks. So we had this ongoing reflection taking place so that the kids then could refer back to it so that they had something more meaningful to talk about at the end of the unit. Now notice this question down here, next time. So when I said next time, what I was really talking about with them is that I would start to use them as part of the planning process. So you know how at the end of the old planner, we had to write down the student reflections, etc., etc. So that was where I started to include their voice in it rather than me just filling it out. So it was a genuine student reflection being added to my planner. And then I used their reflections at the end of that unit to help guide me with the new unit. And I also involved them in that conversation at the beginning of the new unit. So basically I was co-planning way back then, okay? So then, as we progress with this, or as I progress with this over the years, I realized this has to be a wee bit more structured in order to have more of the kids' voice, more meaningful reflections taking place, especially with the disciplines, rather than just the end of the unit thing. Because if you remember, it used to just be chucked in the portfolio and that was it. So these had to become more meaningful, okay? So what I then did, and I've always said that structure is the key to increasing student agency. So bear with me as I explain this one. Okay, so, and I'll take a picture of this and I'll post it so it's clearer as well, and I'll put it on my Facebook page. But this type of chart, so this is a mock-up, okay? Obviously, I'm not in a 5th grade classroom at the moment, but this is a mock-up of how I did it. So we talked about what it was to be reflective, Rather than just saying, I am reflective, I really wanted them to see what it was to be reflective. And so this would be blank. Okay. So I'm asking you to imagine this would start off blank. And then I worked through the whole process of what it meant to, or what it means to reflect, to be reflective. So I was developing reflective thinking skills. And so it started with evaluating where we are. Then we would make these connections. Hi, Sarah. Hi, Christine. We would make these connections, which is basically drawing conclusions. And we had to explain ourselves before we would think about our next steps, our plan, and then our action. We would then have to act on these next steps. So this was, although it looks linear here, it was basically the cyclical process that was taking place. Evaluate, connect, explain, plan, act. Okay, so then what I had is that I divided it into the basic elements that we wanted to reflect upon. So I would do this a bit at a time. So with the learner profile, it was more about just focusing on self, but I really wanted this awareness of self, who we are as within this learner profile, but also being aware of what the learner profile looks like in others. The skills, the approaches to learning skills. So these were the tools that we used, what we learned and we used to help us with our progress. The content, well, it's straightforward. It's like what, the written curriculum, what we're knowledgeable about and our understanding with it. And also concepts, right? The conceptual understanding, the big ideas, that we were talking about and, their understanding of that. So then it started, as I said, with structure. So I would add, so I'm the black ink. I would start with very structured guided questions, learner profile. What action did I take to develop my learner profile? Who will I become next week using this particular profile trait? Or who will I become by the end of this unit? Talking about the focus profile attributes that we did. Again, the skills. What skills did I use the most? What challenged me? Those standard questions that we always came up with. But then there would be some that were a wee bit more out of the box, such as, how can I communicate my ideas? Because we wanted communication skills. Which thinking routines did I use the most? Those are all things that we needed to reflect upon, within the unit of inquiry, but also as the ongoing process, especially with content. What have I learned? How might my new knowledge help me tomorrow? Or what I've learned today, how can it help me next week? So this was part of the, these would be used within reading, within maths, all within the transdisciplinary unit. And then obviously the concepts. What new understanding do I have? What still feels uncertain? What do I still wonder? What connections have I made? How has my learning changed me? Actually, this was a kid's one. This was a kid's question. And this is one of my favorites. What made me think, wow, that was a kid question too. I'm not that creative. And then what they did after that was that the children started to add their own questions to our chart. So ultimately what we ended up with, because they're now becoming more familiar with what is expected, that kind of thing. They're thinking creatively with those guiding questions. So now we have ultimately is this bank of guiding questions, all focused on being reflective, the reflections. So when it came, hi Dina. So when it came to actually having to reflect and write reflections on whatever it may be, weekly, monthly, that kind of thing, they could then pick their own questions. And as they thought of more questions, they built upon others' questions. What can I teach others with content? I love that one. What strategies did I learn? And then the children would build upon that with, well, how did these help? What did I learn that I can use over and over? I've always loved that one as well. Who could I help? How did collaborating help me? How did collaborating help others? So what you're looking at is a collection of the children's voice. And like I said, I'll take a picture of it. Yep. So you can see this is clearer. You've got a collection of the children's voice, and suddenly this whole reflection thing becomes authentic. First of all, right? It's not the same old teacher questions over and over, and it becomes meaningful. That was the main thing for me. It became meaningful. And it not only did it give me, from the teacher's perspective, more of an insight into what the children were thinking, about the process of inquiry, about the elements, where they were with their understanding of it all, but also as to who they were with learners, with being learners, but also, more importantly, I think, is that it developed a greater awareness of who they are as learners. So I really did like that part as well. Hi, Nadia. Hi, Reina. So I had a few questions that people have been asking me over the past few weeks as I've been talking about reflection. So I was just going to kind of talk about some of these as well. And if you have questions, feel free to add them and I'll try to get to them. So as I said, this was a progressive process. It's taken me years. I'm hoping what I share here that you can use, adapt to suit you and your kids' needs, share some ideas, whatever. So as we worked through this, okay, we have this bank. I felt like reflection had to become more of a daily process. And so I created, Agartha, hi. I created a reflection journal and we use this on a daily basis. So this is part of the thinking skills, right? Being reflective. And so I was developing reflective thinking skills. And this was my journal. I created my journal. It's on Teachers Pay Teachers, but I had this with my 4th, 5th and 6th graders for years. And so let me kind of show you a little bit about what I mean. So obviously we're looking at the reflection cycle, okay? So very much making it crystal clear what it means to be reflective. And then it focuses largely on the attributes of a learner. So because reflective is part of the learner profile, okay? We started with that. And then I have them at the beginning of the year think about who they are, where they are with regards to the learner profile. So the older kids created this pie chart with the learner profile, and then they used this as we progressed through the year to evaluate their progress and monitor it. I then created a younger years one because my colleagues were like, hey, we would like one too. So the younger kids could create their own graph. This was cutting and pasting, of what they felt they were with learners at the beginning of the year, and then they evaluated it and reassessed where they were as they had developed throughout the program of inquiry. These are now digital as well, the drag and drop and everything like that. So that was how we moved from just this to this ongoing reflective thinking. And as they became more adept with reflective thinking and what it meant to be reflective, these questions became more profound. And so I have kept this bank of questions over the years, and I've used them over the years with different kids, different grade levels as well. And so I'm now sharing them with you too. So let me just show you, I have a resource that I created and it's on my store. And you can obviously, you can make this yourself, but if you don't feel like making it, it's already made for you. So let me just kind of show you what I have. Now keep in mind that some of these are questions that I created and some of these are questions that the kids created, so what the children said. So this resource just goes through what reflection is. It's interactive, it's digital. Let me get to the point. Okay, so, you know, you got your standard questions. What have I learned? What new understanding do I have? Blah, blah, blah. What do I enjoy? But then it starts to get a wee bit more, as I said, profound. This is when the kids started to become more creative with their questions. And then this is still my favorite. What made me think, wow. And then they have, added to it. And of course I now have this fabulous bank, which I can, I've already made. So if you wanted it, you could have it. Let me get to the learner profile part. So you can see here, it has the chart, the drag and drop where they assess themselves at the beginning. And then, as they progress, they can add more to it. We used this last year when we were doing distance learning with student-led conferences. So the children, this continuum, they assess their ATL skills. The children then got to choose, and I said, I want you to choose like 2 to 3 per, let me switch around. I want you to choose 2 to 3 per element to include in your student-led conference, which was digital. So all of that. With 3 to 5 year old learners, Agartha, yes, this was the 3 to 5 year old thing, this journal here. And it's actually one of my top sellers with regards to reflection because it has the digital version. It's all the drag and the drop. And so you've got the graphs that they can make. You've got where they set goals. So it's very easy to use with those little ones. They can create pic collages about who they are. And then the value of this part is that they're communicating with you. They're talking to you. So the dialogue is where you get the reflection coming in. They're making connections. So they've got the thinking skills. And then again, it's the dialogue. You can be recording it. The parents can be recording it, making a film. What is, oh, nature. It's nature. This is so fun. Setting goals. So again, there's lots of fun things for the younger ones to do as well. So one of the questions was, what is the difference between doing a daily reflection journal or a weekly reflection with the ongoing formative reflections and the summative reflection as well? So my answer to that is that there are so many different activities in these journals that you can pick and choose, or you can have the kids pick and choose. So just to give you an example, one of them is about setting goals. And so they have the graph. Okay, so just to give you an example here, right? They pick their top 3 goals type of thing. So they're reflecting on that, and then they have to set how they're going to have action with that. Here you go. Here's another one. Self-reflection. Right there. And then they use those as part of their reflection as well. So because these are also digital, it's easy to upload to digital portfolios or to print off for if you've used the good old fashioned binder portfolios. So you've got both ends of the spectrum, the really young kids, you've got the older kids, and then you got the middle kids, which is probably grades like 2 and 3 in there too. So that was to answer that question. Another question was, how does reflection work in an assessment? Well, and this was Ravi from India. Reflection is part of the assessment. So I call it inclusive assessment because it's about involving the children in the whole process. And if you've been around the inquiry-based classroom or the PYP for a while, you'll know that we don't give grades. We have continuums, we have rubrics, we have checklists. We want to get the children involved in creating those things as well. And it's largely feedback. So you've got your students' feedback, your teacher feedback, your peer feedback, and even the family feedback. So it's the whole community are involved in this reflection process as part of the assessment. So the next question was, how do we bring agency to the process? I'm really hoping that some of the things I've shared with you give you some suggestions for how this involves agency, how we're developing the children's voice. So if you go from that initial cloud that I had, which was just a bank up there for them to add their ideas and the reflections as they progress through the unit, to this one, which is far more structured, offering guided questions, and then the children get to add their questions. Then you have these questions already for them, okay? So you would obviously scribe them if you're with the younger kids. So that's it. That's all I got for you today. I'm hoping that helps, that gives you some ideas to adapt, to share, to use directly, and from there, I hope that helps with inclusive reflection and some meaningful, purposeful, authentic reflections. All right, thank you very much. I will post this to the feed so that you can refer to it. And if you get any other questions, you can add them to the comments. Oh, and there's also a couple of other people that have really good resources for reflection. So I'll share their information too, especially if you're Spanish speaking. Deborah, I can't remember her account name, but anyway, I'll share them. And also Annette with Inquiry and Mindfulness. She has some wonderful reflection material that focuses more on the personal, social, and emotional development of a child too. So lots of things for you. Okay, thanks again. Bye.